Hey, I'm Steven, and this is Cassie. We're about to go see Venom, and we will see you after the credits. So we just got back from seeing Venom, and I guess one quick thing. I kind of want to talk, just because it was a trailer, I kind of want to talk about the Spider-Verse movie coming out. It looks really good. I've had mixed feelings about the art style, but now finally seeing a full trailer on the big screen, I finally realized why they chose it, because it's kind of this almost like Tim Burton-y stop motion claymation style look. But when I finally saw it on the big screen, it finally clicked with me why it looks that way. And it's almost like a flip book kind of thing, like almost like comic book kind of jumping off the page is what it kind of looks like. Plus, seeing Miles Morales in a movie is going to be cool. That brings me kind of to another point of like, I've got a lot of history with Spider-Man.
I know nothing.
I've got a lot of Spider-Man pops in the background back there.
And a lot of them are from me.
Yes. The only one that's even kind of related to this movie is this one right here, and that's my Venom pop. I actually don't have any Venom figures.
Not yet.
Not yet. But we're here to talk about the movie. I liked it.
Yeah, I think it was good.
From
an outside point of view, it was watchable. I feel like it built enough up that it was understandable. Except for that end credit scene, which I didn't get. I recognize the name. I don't know anything about it.
So this is not going to be a spoiler-free review, probably, but I'm not going to try and, do heavy spoilers.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say, things will get said, and I'm not going to... If you're watching this, you're probably either going to see the movie or have seen the movie. And I can't think of anything that isn't kind of obvious from the first few minutes anyway. It wasn't a very unpredictable movie.
No.
But like she said, you don't need to know a lot about the Spider-Man universe to get into this movie. The character Venom in the comic books is entirely linked to Spider-Man. It's almost like a Spider-Man darker half.
Yeah.
And his whole means of existence at first is basically to take revenge on Spider-Man. Because the symbiote attaches with Peter Parker first, and is almost like a perfect pairing.
And from here, it seems like they've kind of separated this from the actual, Spider-Man aspect of it, and have made a newer style character from it. It's given it a different background completely.
Taking Spider-Man out of the equation, I think the best part of this movie is Eddie Brock and Venom's, the symbiote's relationship is probably the best way to put that, yeah.
Their compatibility.
There's almost nothing, granted, I'm not the biggest, I don't know everything about Venom lore, but I've got enough of a background. I had the Lethal Protector comics, that this movie is at least loosely based off of, and those comics also had Spider-Man in them, so it's a pretty good Venom story.
I feel like because of everything going on with Spider-Man right now, and what's happening in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and this not being a Marvel Cinematic Universe movie, and them having to pull that out of it, the movie itself was really good, and the storyline was good, and they gave it a good background that stood well on its own, while still pulling away from its technically original origins.
I think it's kind of funny you think the storyline, because I think the plot is serviceable.
It's a little bit predictable, but it wasn't bad.
There were things that really didn't make sense to me. The whole plot of this movie so there's basically the alien symbiote standpoint and the human standpoint.
Yeah.
And they do intersect. So the human standpoint, Eddie Brock is a reporter. Oh, I just want to bring this up. So he's living a happy life at first. Like, he's got his cool reporting job at investigative journalism.
Peter Parker.
Well, that's Eddie Brock's character in the comic books, to be fair. He's kind of like the anti-Peter Parker at first.
Okay.
So that's, like I said, a lot of Eddie Brock's and Venom's characters are very tied to Peter Parker and Spider-Man, so taking them entirely out of their equation is a little weird.
Yeah.
But they kind of had to, I guess. But, so he's an investigative journalist, and basically, like, he gets fired because he's too edgy. He's
too into the truth and doesn't want to settle.
Which, yeah, bro, if you want your job, don't go against your boss like that.
Also, don't steal confidential files.
Right? So,
you know.
So he gets fired for good reason. I mean, the guy is a jerk, but also, I feel like the guy doesn't actually do enough to Eddie Brock to warrant Eddie Brock wanting revenge. He kind of did it to himself.
Yeah, I mean, he did write asshole on the sticky note.
Yes. So then it basically, once he's fired and his fiance leaves him, again, happens in like the first 10 minutes of the movie, not really a spoiler. I just remember a clip, the convenience store owner says Eddie looks like shit. I'm like, he looks actually exactly the same as he did 6 months ago. His haircut is the same. His facial hair is the same. He doesn't even look sleep deprived. So did he look like shit before?
I feel like it was more like his mannerisms and like the way he talked was just kind of like...
I just don't think there was a big enough... He looked like he was at rock bottom when he was happy, in my opinion.
That's fair.
And when he was at rock bottom when he was miserable, he looked kind of the same and acted kind of the same.
He's just got like... If you've ever met a tweaker at 2 a.m., that's what he reminds me of.
Well, that's kind of... like, especially when he got the symbiote.
Oh, for sure. Because it was just like stuttering and everything. He was like talking to himself and...
Which brings me to my next point. There's a female scientist who kind of sees what these symbiotes are doing and goes to Eddie Brock for some reason.
So, what had happened is she knew... It wasn't necessarily what the symbiotes were doing, but it was what her boss was doing, like, with human testing too soon, and she knew that Eddie Brock had tried to expose him of like, what happened, so it was more her going to the only person she knew who wanted the truth, and who would help defend the truth, is what, like, I took from that. It wasn't like
I do get that aspect of it, but Eddie even brings up, like, why not go to the police? And she says, to protect my family. You don't know what would happen? Why wouldn't...
Money. Like, the guy's rich. Like, he's gonna get away with everything. Look at what he's gotten away with already.
Yeah, but, like, nobody knows the truth.
I'm sure,
you send in cops or whatever.
He'll be able... But, like, I feel like if they send in cops, he'll know who did it. Like, he'll know, like...
He figured it out instantly anyway. I'm just saying, it was kind of a weak plot point. The point was to get Eddie Brock in there so he could bond with Venom. That was the point.
Yeah.
Which is a plot convenience, this movie is not about the plot, and I'm just gonna say that. Plot, I would give this movie, like, a 5 out of 10. For the action and the stunts and the relationship between Venom and Eddie Brock, I would give it like a 9 out of 10 or so. I think it's actually a very entertaining movie if you're not thinking too hard about it.
I don't think too hard about anything at this point. I don't get enough sleep for that.
So another symbiote bonds with, like, the evil guy who's trying to get I don't even know his name.
I was like, what the friggity frack is his name? I don't remember.
Evil guy. Evil symbiote bonds with evil guy. And they get together to try and go into space because the evil guy wants the symbiotes so they can survive in space, and the symbiotes want a host so they can go into space to bring more symbiotes to Earth.
They want to take over Earth and, like, feed off of the Earth and feed off the people.
And at first, Venom wants to go into space to that planet, too. But then, after a short time with Eddie Brock, he's like, nah, I actually like it here.
Yeah.
Just another one of those, like...
That was a little bit of a weak point. Like, I understood what they were going for. They're like, you changed my mind. And it's like, oh, that's cute, but that's also super weak.
It's... Again, kind of plot convenience of now Venom has to be the lethal protector.
Sure.
They never actually use that line, but, like...
Yeah.
It's kind of like how in Spider-Man Homecoming they never say with great power comes great responsibility.
So,
you know they want to say it, but they're not going to.
So, I'm a little disappointed with the I Am Venom scene, because you see that in the trailer, and in the trailer it looks really good, and I was like, when is that coming? I'm so excited, or like the We Are Venom. I was so excited for that scene, and then I saw it and was like, this isn't as good as I thought it was gonna be.
I mean, which...
So at the very end...
Oh, the very end.
Yeah, where it's like, We Are Venom, like, that's the scene you see, like, in the trailer, where he, like, states it out loud.
Yeah.
It just kind of fell flat for me.
I guess part of the problem is, like, it feels like it should be kind of when he's learning how to deal with the symbiote, and it just kind of happens at the end instead.
Yeah.
Kind
of when, like, the whole, like, we thing starts, not at the end. And it was just, like... The way it, like, showed in the thing, it was, like, the face closing on versus, like, the, like, half-open, weird freeze frame.
I guess it depends on which trailer you're watching.
Yeah.
Because I saw more trailers than you did, so I knew that was going to be different. One of my favorite, like, scenes and effects is, you also see this in the trailer, where the symbiote kind of comes off Eddie and is, like, talking to him a little bit like a little sock puppet, but like
kind of great.
It's a really good effect. It really shows like their bond, and it happens pretty early in their bond, but it
happens again with the other guy too.
It does, and it's one of those effects that I really thought worked. I will say, Venom looks...
You were a little worried about how Venom would look. I didn't think it looked bad at all. I felt like it fit within, like, the movement and everything of what was going on. It was fast-paced enough that I wasn't like, that's fake.
I don't think it looks bad. I think, I've told you this exact phrasing, I think Venom looks as good as he can with our technology at the moment. With the tendrils, the tongue, the teeth, and the eyes all looked great, I will say that. I thought, and this is a really weird complaint, I almost thought he looked too shiny and wet. But he is that's a weird complaint because he is a liquidy costume kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I can't really complain about it because it does look good. I don't think there's any way it could look better right now.
Yeah, I'm almost worried that, like, if they took away some of that shine to that, like, light reflectiveness, it kind of, like, adds to, like, the surrounding of it, like...
Well, I will say, I actually think the other symbiote, whose name I also can't remember, looked almost a little better.
But he was done differently.
But the difference, where, like, Venom's tendrils really work with that kind of liquid look, I didn't think the blades looked as good.
Yeah.
Coming off of... And these are just little nitpicks of effects, because CG is the world now.
Yeah. Honestly, like, they did the, like, the skin types, if you will, differently. Like,
yes.
The other one had, like, this silvery skin with, like, red splotch, like, almost looked like there was, like, lava under his skin or something. Like,
and it almost looked a little more armored. Where Venom's suit looks a little more fluid.
It also, Venom's suit looks a little veiny.
Yes.
I noticed towards the end that it was like there was a little more visible detail where it was like white and veiny almost.
Yeah, that's how they get away with not putting the white spider on him. because they can't put a white spider on him because there's no relation to Spider-Man whatsoever.
Yeah.
But they still have to do something to make him not look just like plain black goo.
Yeah.
So they did white veins instead, which does look good. It does look good.
At least they found, like, a way to give them, like, some sort of, like, villain without, you know...
Yeah.
A, like, full-on villain.
Now this brings us... Because there's a big symbiote showdown. Little side note. In all the trailers, they said symbiote, which sounded terrible. Never once do they say symbiote in the movie. It's always symbiote. And I'm guessing there was such a backlash from the trailers, like, oh, I guess it's symbiote, that they fixed it. And it's not... I was so pleased, because I was always little...
I guess I never really heard them say... I didn't
from
watch
from the very first trailer.
I
and
don't watch
you probably
all of
didn't
them.
pay attention to it much, but, like...
Symbiote.
They definitely used to say symbiote,
Oh,
and they fixed it.
thank
And I
God.
am glad, because that would have bothered me.
Although, I did like Lady Venom.
That was kind of a fun nod. In the comic books, there was, like, a Bride of Venom, briefly.
Oh, okay.
I don't know anything about it, except for pictures I've seen. But it looked a lot like that.
It still looked really good. The effect still looked really good, even when they did it on... Also, that little girl. That little girl was terrifying. Jesus.
So I thought most of the action was good. The final fight scene is good, except parts of it are so dark and CGI, because it has to be, that it is a little hard at times to kind of see what's going on, because it's so, like, splashed together.
I just have... Sometimes I have a hard time, like, keeping my focus on action movies in movie theaters, because the screen is so big and there's so much happening and there's so much movement that... You know, like, sometimes some things work a little better on a smaller screen, and I feel like this movie is one of those things that, like, a smaller screen may have helped with some of that action, because you can, like, focus on the whole picture all at once, versus just that huge screen, where you can't really... There's so much movement, and there's so much screen that sometimes it's hard to catch everything going on.
And the fact that it's symbiote against symbiote worries me just a little bit because of the mid-credit scene, which this is probably... It's not a spoiler for the plot, but it is a little bit of a spoiler. Probably the biggest spoiler of the movie, which I already knew about going in. The mid-credit scene, Venom, or Eddie Brock specifically, is called to interview a cell, like a prisoner locked in a cell.
A high-security prisoner.
High-security prisoner, thank you. I was trying to come up with that and couldn't. They never say his name, but if you know anything about Spider-Man comics and Venom comics, you know instantly who it is. He's played by Woody Harrelson. It is definitely Cletus Cassidy. He's got his red curly hair. He's writing "Welcome Eddie" in blood.
He also looks like the weird redheaded, like, fake clown guy from The Simpsons. You know what I'm talking about? Not Krusty, but the one that always tries to kill Bart.
Oh, Sideshow Bob.
Yes.
Kind of.
That's what his hair reminded me of.
I could see that. But basically saying that Carnage is going to be the villain of the next movie. And you have no idea. You've heard the name, but you have no idea who Carnage is.
Pretty much.
The Cletus Cassidy is just a crazy person. Crazy serial killer kind of thing.
Well, I got that.
Yeah. Carnage is the symbiote is the spawn, the first spawn of Venom. And it makes me wonder if he's already bonded with it. Because I'm wondering if he just happened to call Eddie because he's a high-profile reporter, or if he knows Eddie Brock is Venom. I don't know which one.
So Carnage is the first spawn of Venom?
Yes. And maybe... I don't know if it's the only spawn of Venom. There's a lot of symbiote history that I don't really know.
So, like, he came before Venom or after?
Spawn of being, like, after.
Okay.
Venom is essentially Carnage's father. So, symbiotes are kind of asexual. They reproduce, just pull it. But, like,
like how cells split, kind of
yeah,
idea?
basically.
Like, they split apart, and so...
Symbiotes essentially do that, too.
Okay.
And so they're setting up, and Carnage is just one of the most insane, craziest, most violent villains in the Spider-Verse.
Mm-hmm.
Like, bloodshed happens everywhere he goes. He doesn't care who he kills. He has no morals. Which, even when Venom was a villain, he still had a moral code. He was more out to get Spider-Man than anything. He didn't really want to hurt others.
Yeah.
So, eventually... Basically, whenever Carnage was involved, Spider-Man and Venom would have a truce and just fight Carnage, because he was that bad.
Mm-hmm.
And that is obviously what Venom versus Carnage is. If they get a sequel, which I'm sure this movie is going to be successful enough to do, that's what the sequel is setting up for.
Yeah. I will say that, like, they did try to sprinkle some humor in there, and that was kind of nice.
The movie plays almost more like a dark comedy. It loses... If it had gotten a hard R rating, it probably would have been a little more along the horror lines. But because it's PG-13 and trying to be accessible to most people...
Those people who, like, appreciate this kind of, like, anti-superhero-ish...
And that's one thing about Venom, is a lot of people going into this probably expect Venom to be a, like, really hard-ass, almost evil, very serious character. And he's, even in the comic books, he's really not.
I expected, like, a less funny Deadpool. If that makes sense.
It does.
In the, like, anti-hero, or...
I would say that's a fair representation. I thought the bond between Venom and Eddie Brock was about perfect.
Oh, for sure, that worked really well.
They make the movie. So, overall, like a 7.5 is what I would give it.
That's fair. I feel like that's fair. I mean, I don't really know anything about the Spider-Verse or anything, but I think it was an entertaining movie.
Yeah,
so I'd give it, like, an 8.
Okay.
It's an entertaining movie, even not knowing anything about, like, the background of its story. So, just in that aspect, I think it's a good enough movie.
Mm-hmm.
I'd watch it again.
Yeah, I'll probably get it when it comes out. This movie is not about the plot, and that's something you should know going into it. The plot is just enough there so Eddie Brock can bond with Venom, and you can see Venom on the big screen.
But it's nice because you're not distracted by a plot, so you really get, like, what?
I think distracted by a plot is kind of a funny thing to say about a movie.
I know, but, like, sometimes they try to put too much plot into an origin story movie.
That is one thing I do appreciate about this movie.
And that's what I was trying to say, is, like, it's not like, all of this crap thrown you all at the same time while you're trying to, like, especially from a point of view of, like, I don't know who this character is.
Yeah.
It's like, I can actually get to understand who this character is without this, like, random BS being thrown at me. Like, I have no idea who that guy is either.
Yeah. I would say the last thing I want to say about this movie is it's obviously technically an origin story, but it doesn't fall into, in my opinion, a lot of the origin tropes of, like, discovering your powers, having, like, the heroic montage of things.
Must have your arch enemy.
Basically, Eddie Brock gets the symbiote. He's chased and kind of discovers his powers. Well, no, Venom already knows his powers.
Like, it's not Eddie Brock discovering them, it's Venom controlling them. Yeah,
so you kind of skip that stuff, and it's actually fairly welcomed and appreciated.
Yeah.
So, that's a nice thing, because I know a lot of people are tired of just seeing the same kind of origin story. This movie doesn't feel like an MCU movie, and I think that's to its benefit. as much as I love the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and we'll see basically every movie that comes out from that franchise, Captain Marvel, I'm looking at you next. This needed to probably not be an MCU movie, and to its strengths, I will say that in that it is not an MCU movie, it is its own thing, and it works in that aspect.
For sure.
That being said, I think we're going to wrap it up here. This video is a little longer than I thought it would be. I'm going to maybe try and cut little bits of it, but not too much. So keep an eye out for more movie reviews. I think the next one we're looking at is the new Halloween, so I guess bye.